Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of No Limits. My name is Scott Morgan, Motor City Madmouth, and I am pleased to be joined by my good friend Dave Vilhauer. I met Dave a couple of years ago at the National Sports Media Association banquet and award ceremony. He was promoting a book. Nothing's really changed. And of course, I also have Stuart Hack, one of my favorite co-hosts. We've done a lot of good work together. And Stuart, we have another opportunity to do some more good work tonight. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, so just to give everybody an overview that you can find No Limits in all of our broadcasts on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, which is, so this show is being simulcast on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. So please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel to see the video. And of course, you can find our shows on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if that isn't enough, go to the website, www.southfloridatribune.com. You can find them there. Well, I'll tell you what, Dave Vilhauer, I always enjoy bringing you on this show. And when you have a book that never gets outdated like you do, it's unbelievable. So let me go ahead. What's so cool about the show is I have two fathers here. So I'm going to say this, okay? I'm only the father of two cats, Bucky and Boots. There was a time when I aspired to be a father, but I was never the father of Bobby and Jenna, the kids I never had. Those were my two favorite names. People ask me why Bobby. Well, I always liked Bobby Knight because he's a fiery guy, and Jenna's just a cute little girl. Oh my goodness, wow. What could have been, would have been, never would have been, but cats are what it is. But I have two great fathers, and I think this is going to make an incredible broadcast tonight. So let's talk about Dave Vilhauer, a book that never gets outdated. Okay, why don't you carry that a little bit further?
Sure. Well, I live in Aberdeen, South Dakota. I've been a member of the sports media for 42 years. I own and operate a sports website called SD Sports Scene. And about 2.5 years ago or so, I wrote a book called The Parent Trapped Within, a guide to sports parenting. And as Scott previously mentioned here, it is a book that fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, will probably never be outdated because it examines a current issue that we have in our sports culture, identifies how we've gotten there, and then tries to provide some common sense solutions to what we can do about it. So the book really has something for parents, for athletes, for coaches, for officials, for common spectators. Really, it has something for everybody. And I had a music educator that read the book and said, I know it says sports parenting, but the same rules apply to music. So it really is a book, I think, that appeals to a wide range of ages and genders.
Yeah, it's really one of those universal type of books you can apply anywhere. So Stuart, so let's just talk about, do we as a society have the wrong definition of success? It simply cannot be measured in terms of wins and losses or titles won.
So I think success, in my mind, and I was never an athlete growing up. I played, but I wasn't the best player on the team. I worked hard to be mediocre. I think success is within the person. It's the type of person that they grow up to be. And if sports is a part of that, that's great. But I don't think sports should 100% define someone, whether they're successful or whether they're not successful. They have to, be a good family person, whether it's a parent or a child or a sibling. That to me is what ultimately will define someone's success.
So let me ask you this, Stuart. I'm going to carry that a step further. Let's say that you are involved in sports, okay? What would your definition of success be if you were playing soccer or softball or wrestling or whatever the case may be?
How old am I?
I'm not quite sure.
No, there's no. But how old am I if I'm playing? It's different.
High school. High school, middle school, everything pre-college, basically.
So success to me in that, and obviously I don't have the mentality like I'm looking for a college scholarship. I'm looking to play professionally. I'm looking to get better. I'm looking to improve. I want to work hard. The key to success in anything, not just sports, but in business or anything, is don't get outworked. If you're not going to succeed at everything, but don't fail and think, well, if I had done this, there's something I could have done to succeed that I didn't do. So I think if you work hard and you take steps to get better and improve what you do, then I think everything will just take care of itself. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
You know, it's interesting because I do a fair amount of speaking in schools, and this is one of the topics that I talk about. And our culture is so driven by a number of championships won, number of points scored, all of those kind of things. We measure success by numbers a lot of times in sports. And it just simply cannot be championships won because so few people get an opportunity to win their last game. So few people get an opportunity to win a championship. So if that's what your definition is, there's going to be a lot of people walking around feeling like they're a failure, you know? And to your point, some of the best coaches that have built dynasties, I asked them about, you know, success and things like that. And I had a coach tell me, he said, we never talk about winning and losing. He said, I think you set kids up for failure if all you ever talk about is winning. To your point, he said, we talk about improvement. We talk about being the best teammate you can be. We talk about being the best you that you can be. And if you do all the little things, then the big things take care of themselves. And so I think we as a society have gotten so caught up, especially with all the analytics out there now. And people are, you know, first thing you say, oh, you play football? What position? Running back? Oh, how many yards you rush for? You know, I mean, we don't think about all the other things that go into it. And even things off the court. I know of a situation where a star player on one team ended up in a bad car accident. And some of his opponents reached out to the family in their time of need. Hey, what can we do to help? We want to be there for you. I guarantee you some of those people that reached out played on teams that weren't very good by society standards. Maybe they won 3 or 4 games. But you tell me what's more important, winning 3 or 4 games or helping somebody in need when they really are down and out. To me, that's the definition of true success. Okay, what kind of character do you have? Okay, what kind of a teammate are you? Are you going to be there for somebody when they need it most? It's not how many points did you score, how many championships did you win? And that's kind of the point that I was thinking about how our society has really gotten kind of warped, especially in the high school level on down. Colleges, okay, you're on scholarship, whole different deal. Pros, entirely different deal. But, you know, we got these little kids just learning how to play the sport, whether it's wrestling, whether it's basketball. They're in 4th grade, 5th grade, and you show up at a game and the parents are hollering at them, the coaches are hollering at them, the fans are hollering at them, and they're just trying to figure it out. And I'm like, wow, this is just wrong, you know? So we've kind of lost our way with some of that, of the value, the true value of what extracurriculars are really all about.
But do you think, Dave, given that, and, you know, I played, you know, Little League back in the Stone Age, parents are always kind of like that. There were always parents that pushed their kids. There were always coaches that said winning is the only thing. Right. The only thing I see different now, which maybe makes it worse, is social media.
Absolutely. You're spot on. You know, people have now gotten empowered. They can hide behind an alias. Most of them don't because they just don't see anything wrong with it. But I think what has happened in our culture is we have, if you look back how everything has evolved through the decades, people are now screaming and shouting to be heard because the people beside them are screaming and shouting to be heard. I mean, and it filters to everything. And now, I mean, it's just an all-out rage all the time because look at me. Oh, don't look over there. Look at me, you know? And it's just like, whether it's a ball game on a radio, TV, the announcers just seem to be shouting. No, I don't mind somebody shouting on a good play, but why would you shout the whole time? You know, that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But social media has certainly empowered those parents. And I'll tell you the other thing that's really empowered them, and this is a kind of a talking point, maybe this will just lead into that, is talk shows. And I know this is one of these, Scott, that we're on right now, but sports talk, okay? The casual fan will listen to sports talk radio. Well, what are they doing? They're second guessing coaches. They're bashing refs. They're doing all these sorts of things. Now parents are going, well, that must be the norm. Okay, well, I'll just go ahead and do that too. So all of a sudden, we're rationalizing things. We're going, oh yeah, that's the new norm. We can second guess everything. Well, that might be fine for an NFL coach, but it's not fine for like your middle school football coach or your, a high school gymnastics coach, whatever the case may be. I mean, you're right. It maybe was an issue, maybe always has been, but it's certainly magnified. And I think it's become much, much more of a problem now than it was even 15, 20 years ago.
Let me bring out a couple of interesting points here that I think are worth noting. Let's talk about glamorization or individualism, because before we even go deeper into social media, that we have the we movement, 1,000-point scores, the YouTube plays. And I don't care wherever you go. Everybody knows that two of your biggest sites are Google and YouTube. And when everybody talks about way too big, how many views you're going to get, and all such as how many, everything goes viral nowadays because of the glamorization or individualism. So at what point or another, David, do you cover that in your book?
Oh,
because this is a part of what's going on these days.
It goes back to what Stuart said about social media. Okay. I've seen kids, okay, that will come down on a fast break, and instead of making the fundamental play of a nice bounce pass for a layup, they're trying to make a YouTube play so they can get all these hits and whatever. So this kid throws a no look behind the back pass that ends up halfway up the bleachers. So instead of getting 2 points, you get nothing with high risk, high reward kind of thing. But again, what are our millennials doing now? They're watching these YouTube plays. And, one of the biggest factors, in my opinion, is the pros make it look so easy. Okay. Steph Curry will pull up from 40, splash. Okay. Well, now everybody thinks, oh, I can do that. Well, no, first of all, you can't. And second of all, you shouldn't even try to do that within the flow of an offense. When did a 40-foot shot become a good shot in high school basketball? I mean, that shouldn't even be part of the offense unless you've got an unbelievable shooter. But these pros make it look so easy. And so kids try to emulate that. And then it's, and what's really kind of sad is that I've watched high school sports in particular, and college too. It's evolved into a lot of individual play. You've got these kids are so athletic, so they space the floor, and you've got one guy pounding the ball into the floor with four guys watching, and he goes one-on-one. Well, yeah, it's hard to stop, okay? But is that really what basketball is supposed to be a game of spacing and cutting and all of that? And the thing is, it's led to a lot of undisciplined play, but teams are succeeding by doing that because they've got some good athletes, whatever. So then they think, oh, well, that's the right way to play. And I've seen teams, take really ill-advised shots because, oh, hey, I'm open from three, but, it's a 2-point game with 30 seconds left. Maybe I should back that out. I mean, that's kind of what we've morphed into. And the individualism, again, I think a lot of this has to do, again, with social media, okay? We had 1,000-point scores when I grew up. You did too, Stuart, okay? Well, what did you do? You recognized them at the end of the season at a banquet or something like that. Well, now it's gotten to the point where as soon as somebody scores 1,000 points, I mean, it's all orchestrated, okay? The kids are showing up with posters and banners and balloons, and everybody knows it's going to happen, and it's become a big dog and pony show. I know coaches who have deliberately force-fed kids because they wanted them to get to 1,000 against a weaker opponent, or stuck kids back into games. I'm like, that's not really a good idea, because now you're running up the score, you're creating ill will. Should that record even count? If a guy's going off for 50 against a team that's won 2 games, I mean, that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, trying to jam in that last touchdown when you're up 30 because, oh, this might be the school record for and we saw this spill over to the pros this year with Baltimore. Remember that last play of the game? Now they didn't run it for a touchdown, but Lamar Jackson, they wanted that rushing record. And so he actually ran a play instead of kneeling, and Denver called him out on it, So this is an issue in our society right now.
It was an issue even when I played too, no social media, but I was in a rec basketball league, an 11 to 13-year-old rec, and there was only a few teams, but one team was super bad. And for whatever reason, our coach, and we didn't know any better, he just said, let's run it up. And before we knew it, it was 16-2. And then at half, it was 50-6. and we ended up shutting them out in the second half. We won 102-6, and we put at the end of the game, the coach, he didn't have any kids that were on the team, but he had an 8-year-old son who was too young to play. He put him in at the end. Someone fed him the ball, and the kid scored a basket, towards the end of the game. And, we just kind of played and everything. But you think if you were on the other team,
right,
how that's going to make you feel. And look, there was no social media. It was in the newspaper. It was just as far as the score.
Yep.
Most people thought it was a misprint.
Right.
And, we had heard they were a bad team before we going in. But
well, and that brings up an interesting point. We've got a mercy rule here in South Dakota. Some people love it, some people hate it. But again, there are no winners in a situation like that. Nobody loves blowouts. The team that's stomping somebody doesn't love it. The people getting stomped on don't like it. I mean, it's just a no-win situation. But there are right ways and wrong ways to play the game. I know of a coach that has told me I will never score 100 points on somebody. If we get up, 80-40, we're running clock, we're making extra passes, whatever. I mean, we're not going to try and get to 100, whatever the case may be. Now, you play to win. I get it. You play to the final whistle. I mean, look at the NFL games this past weekend. I mean, they all come down to the final play. You never want to stop trying, okay? But to me, there's a big difference here. If you're up 40-0 and you're running a double reverse flea flicker to score another touchdown, as opposed to your backup running back running between the tackles and the other team can't tackle, okay? There's a big difference there. It's kind of like baseball's unwritten rules, stealing up 10 runs in the bottom of the 8th, I mean, that's just going to get you in trouble. But it kind of reminds me, and this is in the book, and I don't know who said it. I wish I would have said it because it's really profound, but I'm not smart enough to say something like this. But there's a saying I really like that says, people may not remember what you said, and they may not remember what you did, but they will always remember how you made them feel. And that kind of goes back to your point, Stuart. That team that lost, they didn't feel very good, and they probably never forgot that either, whether it was intentional or unintentional on your team's part.
Right.
Well, amazingly enough, when we talk about the media influence on sports culture, back in the day when we were growing up, you only had a few major networks, and that was it. Now you go to your television set, you have several hundred channels out there. You have the internet, you have newspapers and whatnot. So when you talk about the media culture and how it's evolved over the years to where it is now, how do you put in perspective, Dave, okay, but the before and after product about how things were with kids versus where they are now? Because I know media culture is really, really huge, and that's something we talk about heavily.
Well, like you said, Scott, at one point, your media had kind of your small section, and that was it. We didn't have 24-hour sports programming like we do now. I remember when ESPN came into existence in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s.
Right.
And that was a big deal. Okay. And it really changed everything. But when you have people, I mean, you can't turn on a sports channel in the daytime without all these sports talk shows. Well, what are they talking about? Okay. They're talking about they're second guessing coaches, they're second guessing players, they're who's going to score how much, whatever. Okay. And so that gets to be a problem. And the fact that when it starts filtering down to the high school level and to the middle school level, those kids are not on college scholarship. The majority of those kids are never, ever going to play a college sport. Okay. They're out there having a good time. And now we've got people that are starting to kind of critique them a little bit and what have you. I know of media people that have had a poll. How many touchdowns is Johnny going to score tonight? High school game. And it's 5, 4, 3, whatever. Well, now if Johnny only scores 2, did he let everybody down and all of that? I mean, again, oh, he doesn't have his 5 yet. Well, let's get that extra one, even though we're up 40 points. It just leads to all kinds of problems, things that maybe we weren't dealing with so much back in the 70s.
Well, not only that, you have announcers yelling at each other to see who can overpower each other.
Exactly.
So I'm not mentioning any particular names, but I think you know where I'm going with that.
Yes.
And then, so now all of a sudden kids can yell at other people because they watch that on TV.
Yep.
Is an example of it. And then to make matters even more interesting, you've got betting shows to begin with, which were unheard of too. So between loudmouth announcers and betting shows, which kind of falls into your wheelhouse, Dave, about
Yeah.
the things that are turning this book into something that never gets outdated, because more and more trends are occurring, which is why we keep bringing you back on.
Well, and the thing is, it just keeps escalating. And so really the whole point of the book is to help change our culture one person at a time. If you can just stop and think, I understand people get caught up in the heat of the moment, okay? You say things, you do things that you later regret. But if people will just stop and think a little bit before they get into that environment, so they realize, okay, you know, I know it's going to be intense tonight, but I just need to watch myself because people are watching me. I've seen community leaders act so out of character, and trust me, people remember that stuff. They'll forgive, but they won't forget. And is it really worth risking your reputation on as a community leader? That's what you want to be remembered for, how you acted at your son's or daughter's game? Probably not a good sign. So again, if you can just understand that it is what it is, it's a game and it's not your game. This is your son's or daughter's journey, okay? So you can't be overly invested, okay? It just doesn't work. You can't want it worse than your son or daughter, okay? They have to be the ones that want it. You can't will it on them, okay? You can give them some advice, but at the end of the day, it's their thing, okay? It's their journey. It's their time to shine. You have a role. You don't have to be a mannequin, but be there and support and encourage your son or daughter. And by all means, don't discourage the opposing team. I've seen people, and they cheer almost as loud against their opponent as they do for their own son or daughter's team. I mean, that just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Now, do you think, Dave, that these parents are doing this? I think the way you parent is the way you learned when you were parented growing up. So you think these parents that are exhibiting the behavior that you just mentioned are doing that because that's what their parents did when they were playing, and that's all they know as far as parenting, and they can't help the way they act?
That's certainly a part of it. But again, our society is so easy to blame others for our own mistakes, okay? At some point, we have to be responsible for our own actions, okay? Whatever that action may be, whether it's at a game or whether it's your lifestyle, whatever it is, you can't constantly blame somebody else for your shortcomings, okay? And we have a tendency to do that in our society. And so while there may be some of that, I'm sure, you know, there's kids that are just, they're under so much pressure, not necessarily from the coach, but some of that, but from mom and dad. And when they get home, what's the first thing that happens? Mom and dad critique their game, point out all the errors, all the flaws. That's the last thing your son or daughter wants or needs at that particular time. Wayne Carney, the former executive director of the South Dakota High School Activity Association, I have this in the book, by the way, said there's only 3 things you need to ask your son or daughter when they're done with competition. Number 1, what did you learn? Number 2, did you have fun? And number 3, where do you want to eat? That's all you have to ask them, because after that, it's over, okay? Now, you can, and I know some parents, they have a 24-hour rule. They don't talk about the game for an entire day till all the emotions are cooled off, taken out of it. Then they'll go back, maybe discuss some things. But the problem is a lot of these kids either get burned out because mom and dad are hollering at them the whole time, or they're so nervous that they can't even play up to their potential, or 3, they just quit because they don't want to deal with it anymore. You know, I'll go and play on my Xbox or whatever because I don't want to be yelled at by mom and dad or whoever, you know. And there again, that leads to a big problem because, you know, now we have less kids participating in sports. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If you look at the people who are the most successful in our society, okay, all of our leaders, I would say at least 90%, if not more, if not higher, okay, we're all involved in something outside of the classroom, okay? Extracurricular activity, might not be sports, might have been band, drama, debate, whatever, but they were all involved in something bigger than themselves. And that's where you really grow and you learn things like self-discipline and teamwork and chemistry and all of those sorts of things. And so you might not be the best athlete, that's fine. But there are so many life lessons to be learned through extracurricular activities. And I try to mention some of that in the book.
I think the one thing that tends to get overlooked here, though, with everything, with all the pressures these kids have, we all know the price of a college education is enormous. And therefore, the parents want their kids to get a college education, and they're pushing them out very hard because of the scholarships too. And I know that that has to definitely come into play with all the extra pressure that they're getting as well.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about that, Scott. I think that's a good point. But here's the other point that I would contradict that with, is that less than 7% of all high school athletes will go on to play college sports. And of that number, probably half of those will not even compete for 4 years. They'll wash out. Okay. I know of a parent who was upset with the play calling of his son's coach because he thought it was going to cost his son a college scholarship. Okay. Well, now what are we doing to that team? Okay. We're elevating one player over another, but by thinking, number one, that he's the best player, which that might not even be the case. Number two, okay, if the son finds out, okay, now, oh, well, no wonder I didn't get a college scholarship. It's all the coach's fault. Okay. Goes back to Stuart's issue of, not taking responsibility for our own actions. Oh, it didn't work out. Well, let's blame somebody for it. Okay. It just can't work like that.
Well, it's interesting how you bring that up. I'm going to bring 3 examples up of very, very influential parental figures. We're going to start with the Williams sisters, okay? The father was heavily involved in what they did. Give him a lot of credit, raised 2 champions with Venus and Serena. And then, of course, how do you go have a conversation without LeVar Ball and the massive influence that he's had? And now what I've noticed recently in golf is Tiger Woods and his son, Charlie. If I had to look, and again, I'm only seeing surface circumstantial things, but when I look at the 3 individual, and again, there's probably more to this than I'm even bringing on, but these are the 3 things that come to mind, how you connect the dot between parenting and so forth. It looks like Tiger Woods a little bit more laid back with Charlie, where the other ones are a bit on the high strung side.
Right.
So when you break down each and every one of these scenarios, where does that all fit into the big perspective of what you're trying to, the message you're trying to get out?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because there are certain isolated instances where children of parents who push them, okay, do very well, okay. But I would imagine that those are extremely in the minority, okay. You can't tell me that Michael Jordan's sons weren't encouraged to go and be great basketball players, okay? They're never going to match their dad's success, okay? Didn't come close, and that's okay, okay? We are all gifted differently. Now, the Williams sisters, yes, okay? Unbelievably talented, okay? Now, they could have been maybe marginal, and the dad could have pushed them, and they might have achieved something, but it takes more than just repetition, muscle repetition and muscle memory. You've got to have a desire to get better, to Stuart's point, okay? You have to be somewhat gifted physically to be able to do that sort of thing. And it doesn't hurt to have somebody that's in your corner that who's been there, done that can give you some pointers along the way. But again, at the very foundation of everything, whether it's your job, Scott, or yours as Stuart with the taxes, whatever, okay? At the very foundation of what you do, you have to enjoy it, okay? Because if it can't all be fun and games, but if you don't enjoy what you're doing, okay, you're never going to reach your full potential, okay? You're going to be frustrated. You're going to make life miserable for yourself, for your coworkers, for your employee, for your family, okay? So you have to enjoy what you're doing as well. So while those were, examples that where it worked out, there's a lot more where it didn't work out. So again, it's not a one size fits all, but the people have to have a desire to want to get better and have to enjoy what they're doing.
Now, do you think, Dave, there's a difference in this between team sports and individual sports?
Sure. No, I don't think there's any question about that. And to a lot of degree, whether your team sport, an individual sport could be wrestling. You're still on a team, but a lot of it is individual. Okay. Golf, same thing. Tennis, same thing. Okay. Certainly it's a lot different because let's say that you're a quarterback on the football team. Okay, well, now you've got, 10 other guys on the field with you and you're all pulling in the same direction. I mean, you can't go rogue and do your own thing. It's just not going to work. Okay. Whereas you're playing golf or you're playing tennis, now you can do your own thing, because you're not tied to a bunch of other individuals that are on the same court or the same course with you. Okay. So there is that individual aspect, which makes it a little bit different than team, for sure. There's no question about that. But again, most of these teams, and I didn't really even put this down as a bullet point, but this is really important, so I'm going to bring it up. Whatever it is in life, whether you're work for a bank or whether you're in education or whether you're on a basketball team, okay? I can't stress this enough. The leader sets the tone, okay? You have to have great leadership, and if you do, it will filter down. If you have poor leadership, it will be chaos, okay? And you can see this just on a football team, a quarterback, okay? He's kind of the leader of the offense. When push comes to shove, are they going to be calm and cool and collected? Are they going to be able to function, or are they going to panic, okay? And it's the same thing with every other walk in life. I had a football coach tell me, I can have the greatest scheme, and if the kids don't buy in, it's never going to work. I can have a marginal scheme, but if the kids believe it'll work and I convince them that it'll work, okay? But again, it comes from the leader. He sets the tone, and then all the other pieces fall in behind. When you have trouble in the workplace, okay, is the boss going to say, oh my goodness, the sky is falling, okay? And then everybody runs around and they're panicking and it's just chaos. Or is the leader going to say, you know what? It's all right. We've got a plan, okay? We're going to be just fine through this. Guess what happens? Everybody comes together and it works, okay? And that leadership can be government, can be, whatever it is, okay? Could be a coach, even at a small school level, okay? Kids are very impressionable. You give them leadership, you give them that feeling of security that, oh, this is going to be okay. Yeah, okay. And it works. It's a very important piece.
The one point that tends to really become underemphasized a little bit is inappropriate fan behavior at every level. And what I mean by that is when people need to be responsible for their own actions and should have a tougher policies and how you do enforce them. I'm going to tell you right now, the one thing I really, really enjoy being a member of the media, and don't take this wrong out there, folks, is I don't like to be around the fans. I like to be in my cozy press boxes around my colleagues, but not everybody has that luxury where they're going to get hit with a beer and get yelled at, and let alone considering what's really on the line here. And I know that that's something that's really important to you, isn't it, Dave? The inappropriate fan behavior at every level.
Huge, because there are some nights, guys, where I'll go to a gym and the story of the game is some guy in the stands or some gal in the stands, and they're detracting from the play on the court. Okay, because of their behavior. Well, that first of all, you're cheating the people who are out there trying to play the game, because now you're drawing attention away from them onto yourself. And then there's just no excuse for that. We just saw a prime example of this. And again, people will try to justify anything in our society. Okay. And do people make bad calls? Absolutely. They're human beings. We all make mistakes on a daily basis. Okay. That's all part of it. We don't want robots, okay? Are there going to be bad calls? Yes, there are. But you know what? That's a life lesson. Are you going to get a bad deal in life? Probably. You live long enough, you're going to get a bad deal. Oh, I should have gotten that promotion. Well, sorry you didn't. Whatever the case may be, okay? Now, how do you deal with that? That's one of the life lessons of sports. How do you deal with things when things don't go your way? Now, we just saw a prime example of this with the Cowboys 49ers game. Okay, about 10 days ago. People were upset with the officials. So what do? They start throwing garbage on the field, right? Okay, to me, totally inappropriate at all levels. Okay. Dak Prescott goes on post game. Oh, well, credit to them. Now, he later recanted and said, yeah, I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. But again, we get caught up in the heat of the moment. Okay. And then all of a sudden, if we start going, well, yeah, they had a right to do that. Yeah, probably not. And it just keeps filtering down. And you want to talk about empowering parents. They don't need a shove in the back to act inappropriate sometimes, okay? All it takes is something little. Now, I want to say one thing here. not all sports parents are bad. Far, far from it. Okay. There's a lot of great sports parents. Okay. But all it takes is one person to start something, and pretty soon it becomes 3, 4. Next thing you know, it's 10. And the next thing you know, the whole crowd is going nuts. And so when I go out and I talk to parents, I say, okay, it's like this. Your kids are fighting downstairs. You go downstairs, and what's the first thing that one of your sons or daughters says to you? He started it, right? I mean, we know how that is as parents. Okay, well, it doesn't really matter who starts it, okay? I tell parents, okay, don't start it, and by all means, don't finish it, okay? If you see somebody acting out, shut it off. Just cut it off right there. Say, hey, calm down. It's okay, all right? Don't encourage them, and don't join them, because then you've got a big problem on your hands.
Yeah, you really do. I mean, let's face the reality. I don't, when you see all these fracases take place, the last thing you want to do is they say, get right, Stuart, put gasoline on top of a fire. How many times have you seen a situation for soccer games overseas where let's just get a piece of the action? In fact, I think one of the most interesting things I saw over the weekend was when this fan drew attention to himself with the Buffalo Kansas City game, and Stephon Diggs flattened him. And then all of a sudden he was taken off. Well, all right, fan, you got your moment, okay. And Stephon Diggs did some nice security work. He did some pretty good work down there, leveling them. Yeah. He enjoyed that. Hey, you know what?
Oh, I'm sure he did.
This between the lines, stay away from us. And again, unfortunately, I hate to expound upon social media, because I know we've spent a fair amount of time doing it, whether it's filters, leading the way, promoting children, or whether it's just social media, where you see something on social media, somebody out there gets an idea, then you see it 2, 3, 4, 5 times over. And I don't want to go way, way off topic, but I'm going to mention the powerful effects of social media in a sense where, Stuart and I ought to know this all too well living in our parts, where you had the Stoneman Douglas situation leading to Oxford, and then one thing leads to another. Then you're starting to promote these activities, and then they start to happen. Now, I don't want to get too far off base, but when I talk about social media and inappropriate, not only fan behavior, or just people behavior to begin with, and all I'm saying is there's that big, huge domino effect that takes place, and everybody's getting involved for all the right or wrong reasons, in many cases wrong. And there could be some right behavior as well.
Well, and to expound upon that, Scott, I know of some college coaches that monitor the social media posts of their athletes and of their recruits. And I know of kids who have lost their scholarships because of stuff that they put on social media. So again, it's a real issue in our society.
But you know what they do nowadays, and both my kids did this when they were seniors in high school and applying to colleges. They would change their names on their Facebook accounts. Yeah. So a school or someone was looking for them specifically, they couldn't find them.
Wow. Yeah. Again, and how sad is that? I mean, when we have to change our identity because we are expressing opinions that maybe others would be offended by. I mean, if you have to change and pretend that you're something that you're not, then chances are that's probably not a good thing.
Yeah, the last thing we're looking to do is encourage any more Antonio Browns out there. My goodness, this guy's unreal. And I know we're getting into another subject altogether, and I'm not. But you talk about an individual that's had more chances with more teams than 9 lives, more even stopped at 9 lives. And Antonio Brown, for all we know, might wind up with the Ravens next year with Lamar Jackson. But again, social media, what's that?
He wants to go to the Ravens, and Lamar Jackson said he'd welcome him over.
I know. And the scariest part about it is, in this society, I have a feeling it could probably happen too.
Oh, whether it's there or not, he's going to play next year.
Oh, I think so. I think that's where his next move is. So we can all have a little prediction on here maybe later. Not over the Final Four, but as the Antonio Brown journey continues, my predictions.
What do you think his family was like when he was growing up and playing rec sports?
That's interesting. I don't know, but I know that I can't imagine, Stuart, that this behavior was just a last 1 or 2 year phenomenon. Okay. Chances are this has been escalating for a while. Okay. And again, it kind of goes back to what I said about the leader sets the tone. Okay. I've always said, you show me a team that's out of control, and I'll show you a coach that's out of control. Okay. What you permit, you promote. And if kids are acting out and doing and saying things that they shouldn't be doing, and the coach does not reel them in, again, where does the responsibility lie? Well, in both places. It basically lies on the person acting out, but you can trace it right back to the coach saying, why did you allow this to happen? Okay. There's a right way and a wrong way to do everything, really. And if you're going to let kids get away with doing things the wrong way, it's going to be a problem. And again, people remember that. Okay. People remember a kid that hits a three and blows smoke rings in somebody else's face. Okay. That's just not a smart thing to do.
But do you think some of the fault also relies on the parents? So you could have a coach that nips it in the bud, but then if they're getting it from the parents are going to ignore the coach.
But that's where at your preseason meeting, okay, the coach basically lays the ground rules. I'm the leader. Okay. You have an issue, then you go talk to the AD or whatever. I've been at games where in the timeout, the coach is going over a play and I'm looking at the kids and they're all looking up into the stands at their moms and dads. Well, what in the world? Okay. How tough is that going to be to have success as a team when everybody wants to, their dads shoot the ball? Well, no, the coach didn't tell you to shoot the ball. He ran and called a different play. It's a big problem. And it's especially a big problem when it's a star player. Okay. Now, does the coach have the courage to sit down the star player or not? I mean, the good ones will. The bad ones, my win-loss record, it's about my resume. You better go ahead and keep shooting. Okay. Again, if a coach is coaching to pad their resume, to climb up the ladder, get out. Okay. It's not for that. You should get into the coaching because you love kids. Okay. And you're there to encourage them, to help them learn a lot of life lessons, to help them to develop into outstanding young women and men in our culture. Okay. You're there as a role model. Billy Graham said this best. He said, a coach will influence more kids in 1 year than an average adult will in an entire lifetime. Okay. Coaches have a huge, huge impact on student athletes. I mean, they're teenagers, they're impressionable teenagers. Again, coaches need to understand that it's not all about you and your win and loss record. Okay. It's about teaching life lessons and doing things the right way. If you do that, your win-loss record will take care of itself.
Yeah, it really definitely incorporates a lot of values. And you know what, David and Stuart, you lead into another very good point. And I'm glad that we're going to approach this point because it really falls in line. So the main question, Dave, is are we putting too much pressure on little kids? I'm talking about little kids. Listen, right. I played little league ball myself. Okay. Yep. Really loved it. I will tell you one thing. My father coached me, and I'll never forget 1973, we did win a city championship 21-0. And I when I played for my own father, God love my dad, I never played on a losing team, but he was a perfect role model. And to this day on Facebook, a lot of guys that I grew up with call him coach, but there aren't many like him out there. I'm not saying there aren't good ones out there. Right. I was very lucky that my father was an outstanding coach, but an even better person. But keeping everything in perspective, though, here's the thing. You got a Little League World Series, you got traveling teams, kids being looked at college in the 7th and 8th grade. So there's a lot of film and more so now than there was because you've got, like you mentioned, the YouTubes and more video to put on film than you would have before. So, for example, that 21st draft choice that you had later in the Major League Draft could become a 5th or 10th round pick because you had film that you didn't have before. But staying on pace, okay, here's a question for both of you, okay? Are we putting too much pressure on little kids, whether it's a Little League World Series, or travel teams, and kids being looked at college in 7th and 8th grade? Stuart Hack, why don't you answer this one first, and then Dave, you can follow.
Sure.
Yes and no. I think in a lot of cases, kids are having fun. They have good role models both at home, and they have good coaches. And I don't think there's a heck of a lot of pressure. I think some of the things that we've discussed in this show are extreme cases. So in those cases, I've watched like the Little League World Series, and for the most part, everyone seems happy. And at the end of the games, they congratulate. I've never seen a fight break out of the Little League World Series game. Not to say that it hasn't. There can be cases, yeah, that there's pressure put on them. But I think, and as we've mentioned, if you're getting good role models at home, if your coaches are good role models, then you'll learn good things, good habits, and you'll improve as a player, and more importantly, you'll improve as a person.
Where do you
Yeah,
want to?
and I think you're absolutely right, Stuart. It's a case by case thing, and if the parents are well grounded and if the coach is well intentioned, there's not an issue with it at all. But I've also seen the opposite. I've gone to some 4th and 5th grade games, and all people do is just scream at these kids left and right. And the kids are a basket case, and they end up, half of them are bawling, and they just don't even want to play anymore. And again, I think the one thing is, I have yet to meet very many parents who don't think that their kid is going to end up at Duke playing basketball. Okay. That's the dream. Okay. Oh, he can do it. He can do it. Well, guess what? Chances are that's not going to happen. Okay. And at some point, reality has to set in. And I understand the older you get, the more pressure and responsibility that you should be, having to shoulder. Okay. I don't think we should coddle kids. I think sometimes kids are way too entitled. I think sometimes their feelings are too easily hurt. But I'm thinking that, especially at the lower levels, I mean, kids that are 8, 9, 10 years old, do they need to be screamed at and hollered at because, they showed an error in judgment on a pass or whatever the case may be? That's one of those things that, okay, well, that wasn't a very smart play. Okay, let's try and get that rectified for the next possession or whatever. Okay, there's ways to do that and to educate without belittling. And I just think that, and maybe they are extreme cases, and maybe that's why they stand out because of the magnitude of that. But I know of a lot of parents that just get, well, and it's not just parents, it's coaches, it's everything. And you get these volunteer refs that work these lower level games, umps, whatever. And what do parents expect? Perfection. Okay. You missed the call. Okay, look, even the best refs are going to miss a call once in a while. Okay. These guys are out here trying to do the best they can. And we've got an issue, and I'm sure it's down in Florida too, but we've got an issue in South Dakota, shortage of officials. I wonder why that might be. Well, they're not getting paid much. Okay, they're having to travel. And when they get there, they're getting abuse from both coaches and sometimes the players and probably both student bodies and fans. Okay, now I wonder why in the world they don't want to continue to officiate. Okay, at some point, you have to say, all right, listen, just because you bought a ticket to get into the game does not give you the right to absolutely lambaste an official who may have missed a call here or there. Okay, you're there to support your team, and that's what your role should be. It shouldn't be that of screaming at somebody else because you don't like them or you thought that something was unfair for your son's or daughter's team or your alma mater or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I think the things that tend to get people lose perspective is, number one, when you're playing, I realize everybody's goal is to win. It's a lot more fun to win than it is to lose. But we can't lose sight of the fact that your objective is to have fun and compete first. The other things come into play. That's item number one. Number two, okay, verbally abusing officials or let alone verbally abusing anybody, in my opinion, is a first class no-no. So what I want to do is I want to backtrack on something we spoke about earlier, but go into a little bit more detail before we let you add to whatever you want to do to promote the book. And that's back to media influence, because again, we've been in the business a long time, David. Okay, media influence on sports culture, the effects of talk radio, positive, negative, or any topics off limit. I think that's the thing that we have to really talk about, topics that are off limit here, okay? Because nowadays I even find a lot of things covering pro sports or college sports so much different, because now it's harder for me to cover sporting events wanting to do it because so many topics are off limits because we're limited to Zoom calls and our ability to do it. So let's talk a little bit more about topics that are off limit and go into more detail about what you meant by that.
Well, again, I just think that there are certain things that, depending on the level of competition, okay? Now, again, if you're talking about a pro sport, I'm talking primarily sub-college here, okay? High school and middle school, elementary, that sort of thing, okay? There are certain things that really should be moot points, okay? Questioning officials, questioning, as a fan that shows up, okay? I always tell parents this: you have a role when you show up to a game, okay? It is not that as the coach, unless of course you are the coach. It is not that as the official, okay? You have to understand what your role is. You have a role, and that's to support your son or daughter or your favorite team. But again, you shouldn't be sitting there and saying, well, that's a terrible call, whether it's a play call by a coach or whether it's a call by an official that was made in a game. I mean, those things really should be off limits, in my opinion. Okay. I mean, you're just there and you do the best you can to support your son or daughter, and then you move on.
What do you want to add to that, Stu?
Nothing. I mean, I said it right. You want to support your kids and hope that they, again, succeed as people. Everything else will take care of itself. Teach them good habits young, and everything will take care of itself.
All right, so David, will we put everything in perspective from start to finish, from where we started to where we're at? What are the most important things that people are supposed to get out of your book, and as to why they should buy it?
Yeah. Well, again, the book is called The Parent Trapped Within, A Guide to Sports Parenting, and it really has something for everybody. Parents, coaches, athletes, officials, the common fan. I mean, it really has something of value in there for everybody. And to me, some of the things that we talked about throughout the course of this show are all highlighted in the book. Okay. And sometimes it may deal with sports, but it's really life in general. Okay, it's common sense kind of things. How do you conduct yourself? Okay, what kind of a teammate or a coworker are you? Okay, what kind of a leader are you? I mean, things like that. The book is basically aimed at trying to change the culture that we're living in right now. Are all sports parents bad? Absolutely not. In fact, the majority of them are pretty good. Okay, so how do we handle the ones that are bad? And the other thing is, it's easy to get trapped. Okay, the parent trapped within actually has dual meanings. Okay, number one, okay, as a parent, I'm trapped within my body. I want so hard to help my son or daughter, and I want to say the right thing, but whatever I say comes out be the wrong thing. Okay, Stuart, you can probably relate to this. Okay, we try so hard to do what's right as a parent, and then all of a sudden we fail. Okay, so we're trapped and we don't know how to handle that. I know, here's another parent trap. Okay, I know some really nice people, and they were just fine until their son or daughter got involved in high school sports. They got trapped within the system. They didn't know how to handle it. And for 4 years, they were the most cynical, obnoxious, second-guessing, rude people that you could ever be around. And then their kids graduated and they went right back to being the nicest people around. Okay. So they were trapped within the system, this competitive environment, didn't really have a guide to warn them of the pitfalls. I'm very transparent in the book. I look bad multiple times, but that's okay. If me looking bad can help somebody else from falling into the same pitfalls that I did, I'm okay with that. Okay. And one step further, as a media member, okay, sometimes covering my son or daughter, I was trapped there as well, not being able to really be a parent when I was covering a game because I had to be unbiased, So the parent trapped within really has a lot of multiple meanings behind it.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is it all comes across to me, and I have the book, that it's almost like a little interesting version of a textbook of sorts. It really does. It comes across as a very good read that you can learn from a human interest standpoint, but then you have the textbook concept tied within it. And anytime you have one versus the other, then, there's no doubt that you can certainly take a little bit from it, from both ends. And more importantly, it's universal and not limited to sports. And if I want to in perspective as to why we're on No Limits versus any of the other sports shows. There's a reason behind my logic there, because I want to make sure that people that are watching and listening to the show realize that this is, while on the surface it might be a sports type of topic, this is not a sports topic. It's a very universal idea. And that's why we've expanded the platform. Stuart, what do you want to add to what David talked about?
I think another thing that goes through some parents' minds when they yell or scream at officials and coaches are they have a perception of their son or daughter that they have a certain ability level. And if they see another player on their team getting more playing time or getting more scoring opportunities, even if that person deserves it, they feel their child should get it. And it's not their child's fault that they're not getting it. Whose fault is it? So that leads to the coach for not calling the right plays, the official for not making the right calls. And that can turn perfectly nice people into monsters.
Oh, yeah. Well, and sometimes well-intentioned people can come across the wrong way. Okay. I've seen many people put on Facebook, hey, my son or daughter scored 25 points tonight. And invariably, somebody else will put on, oh, my son or daughter scored 30 points tonight. I mean, it becomes a competition. Okay. Maybe it didn't start out that way. But again, we just have to monitor that so we don't get caught up in that. And, again, parents tend to think that their son or daughter is probably better than they really are. Okay. Now, some cases they are really good. Other cases, maybe not so much. Okay. We're all gifted differently. Okay. That's the bottom line here. And whatever your gift is, whether it's an artist, whether it's a musician, whether it's a sports pro, whatever it is, just do it to the best of your ability. And then there's just nothing to worry about.
When you talk about the extreme competition, and I cannot not mention this, but I was watching the Michigan and Ohio State game, and thankfully the Wolverines beat Ohio State. But I loved it when Ohio State said, we're going to put a triple on you. And all of a sudden, Michigan used that as motivation to beat Ohio State. But the reason why I'm bringing this example up is I don't care if you're at the high school level and it carries into the college level. If you think you have every intention of running this thing up, to me, that's also bulletin board material too. And I know that's probably another animal to begin with, whether it's bulletin board material that could lead to a bigger furor amongst what you already have, which is considered a hot tamale and hot topic to begin with.
Well, trust me, I know it's like this in South Dakota, and I guarantee you it's like this in Florida and every other state, okay, in the nation. There are certain teams known for running up the score, for playing, I don't want to call it dirty, but really rough and chippy and all that sort of stuff. I mean, again, people don't forget that stuff, okay? And that is that really what you want your program to be known for? I would certainly hope not. But again, there are so many examples in this book, Scott and Stu, that, these are all personal examples that I've witnessed, okay? And while they took place in South Dakota, there's been people who have read the book from coast to coast, and they said, you know what, the names are different, but we deal with the exact same situation in our part of the country. Okay, the exact same things are happening where we live. So again, I think the book has some universal appeal, and I think everybody, no matter where you live, would benefit from it.
Well, with that said, where are they going to get it?
Okay, you can go to Amazon. You can find it there. There's a website. It's www.theparenttrappedwithin.com. There's all kinds of information there. There's critiques, reviews. There's shows like the one that I'm currently on right now that are posted there, so you can see other interviews. I've been a keynote speaker at an event. I mean, that interview is on there. So that it's really kind of a catch-all as far as things regarding the book. You can direct message me on Facebook or on Twitter at Dave Vilhauer. I'll be more than happy to send you one. I'll hook you up with a book anytime you want. Makes a great gift for people. So again, I really appreciate, people have been so supportive, guys. I mean, it's been fantastic. Even though the book is a couple years old, people are still buying it at a very frequent pace because, again, to your point, it's relevant. It doesn't go out. It's never going to be out of date.
Yeah, guys like me like to keep bringing you on this show to make sure that we drive home that message.
Well, I really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Like I said, I met Dave Vilhauer a couple of years ago at the National Sports Media Association event out in Winston-Salem. Got a couple books myself. Keep
Thank
I
you.
always like to have a couple on hand, and I'm sure Stuart probably might be intrigued to get it as well. But Dave's a
No
good
pressure,
friend of
Stuart.
mine, and I think it's really important to realize that, you know what, you got a great message, and I'm just glad that we have the platform for which to do it. So, Stuart, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you as well? We appreciate you being a part of our network and helping out from time to time.
Okay, well, Stuart Hack, Hack Tax and Accounting Services, located in Wellington, Florida. That's Central Palm Beach County. Putting smiles on people's faces through tax and accounting for almost 35 years. I could be reached at 561-214-6171 or www.hacktaxandaccounting.com.
And last but not least, me. All right, this is No Limits. My name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Madmouth. This broadcast is simulcast, and I said simulcast, through our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Please subscribe. It's free. Okay. That isn't enough, and you're over in the bus station or you're driving, you want to hear the audio version? No problem. Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also go to www.southfloridatribune.com. You can see it there. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And of course, you can find us on Twitter at Tribune South. So there's a lot of different ways to access myself. If you don't get through to David, I can certainly reach out to him anytime, Stuart as well. So great, guys. Thank you very much for doing this. And I hope that if we can reach 1 or 2, 3, 4 people, then our mission is accomplished. I've always said, anytime you have a public service thing that benefits, reach one person, great. Anything else is a bonus. So any closing thoughts before we wrap it up, other than the fact that you're in a very, very cold area out in Aberdeen, so we're not getting a whole lot of sympathy. Why don't you let them know before we sign off how cold it is up in South Dakota?
Okay, let's see here. It's currently -4, and that's actual temperature. Wind chill's probably, I would imagine, -16, something like that. I think our low tonight is like -13 or 16. But we're tough. Some of us wear jackets from time to time, and they're a little wimpy, but no, it's all good. It's winter time, and so there's nothing to complain about. And again, I just want to reiterate how grateful I am for you to reaching out to me and allowing me to be on the show to kind of spread this message and promote the book. And I greatly appreciate it, and I've really enjoyed this very much, guys.
Well, we've enjoyed it too. And for a lot of you folks that need a geography lesson, Aberdeen, South Dakota is like 340, 350 miles away from Mount Rushmore. If that isn't good enough, 110 miles from the Minnesota state line. And if you want to know where the Twin Cities is, tack on another 300 miles and don't worry about how far it is from our neck of the woods in beautiful South Florida. So meanwhile, on behalf of Dave Vilhauer and Stuart Hack, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of No Limits. And we look forward to the next time. Good evening, everybody, and please be safe. Thanks for joining us tonight.